Hi, Gunnar. How are we doing? Oh, Gunnar's muted.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. As it is 4 o'clock, we might start. So this is Kenneth van Dam speaking. As I said on the first page, welcome everybody. Before I give the word to Paul, the president of the Nacra 15 class, please be aware that everybody's on mute, and that's not that we do not want to hear you, but it's an easy way to make the meeting more, let's say, constructive, and everybody more understandable. So if you have a question, please use the little chat box function. I can see the questions. Paul can see the questions as well, and we can respond to the questions. And if we might ask you to elaborate on your question, and then unmute you. So that's it. So on that notice, Paul.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Well, thanks guys for joining in. This is our first Zoom chat to sort of bring the Nacra 15 community together. Obviously, since its inception, momentum is rapidly building across the globe. And the idea of these chats is just to bring all the activity together, give everyone the option of inputting, and most importantly as well is letting you guys know where we are with the general state of the class. So we've got a few discussion points which we'd like to sort of loosely stick to. A quick overview of the rules update we've been working to. A very current topic about the foiling and the Nacra 15 and where that's going. I think it's wise that we have a quick look at events further down the line. And ultimately, of those events, just a clarification of the racing formats we're looking to establish it through those events. And then there's the opportunity towards the end. It's open forum. Any other questions? So at this point, we'll just start at the start and give you guys a little overview of where we are with the class rules. So we had a set of class rules drafted back in November 2016. And then since the boats have been in action, obviously usage does develop tuning, let's say. And so with open eyes, I've been both to the Dutch Youth Regatta initially, and then most recently we had the largest gathering of 15s we've had yet at Garda for the Nacra Championships, which is fantastic. And we did really there have a good opportunity, have a two-way discussion with the sailors and the coaches, and just actually see what sort of modifications people were doing, and obviously following the adherence to those initial set of draft rules. So taking the strong points from those initial draft rules, we've just enhanced them slightly just to tidy up any loose ends, and just try to bring the whole thing tighter. The timeline on that now is those draft amendments will be sent to World Sailing this week, and we're very much looking forward to having those ratified by World Sailing. The timeline for that should be a couple of weeks, but we're saying definitely by the end of September, which in European terms, that allows us to go into the next United 4 event at the end of September, early October, with the new rules well and truly published. event for people. So comparing and contrasting what they currently have with the actual class rules. And then for sure, when we go into our Youth Olympic Game qualifier in Medemblik, those class rules will be well and truly established and enforced through our a standard measurement process with Leo, our chief measurer, and the rest of the committee helping out. So has anyone got any questions at this stage on the process of the class rules? Kenneth, Gunnar, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Paul, I think there is a grandfathering of the shroud thickness in the work. Maybe you can explain a little bit on that one, going from 3 mil to 4 mil.
Yeah, so over the period of use to now, we've noticed and had fed back that there's been a number of shroud failures, not always catastrophic, but strands breaking, and due to the seriousness of the rigs staying upright, we've had a look at the situation. Nacra have had a look at the situation, and I think we've just thought that it's a very sensible precaution that by the Youth Olympic Game qualifier, that 4 millimeters is a more robust thickness for the shrouds, opposed to the current 3 millimeters thickness. And it's just a bit of one of those unforeseen technicalities. Speaking through the scenario with Peter Vink, I don't think there's any one clear reason why the shrouds are failing, although they are. But we're looking at maybe less than 10 in the numbers of boats we've currently got. But again, 10 we feel is too many. But to give a comparison, the Tornadoes, when Peter was campaigning, they were running 3 millimeter shrouds. So it's not that the boats, we felt they were under spec originally. It's just that I think to increase robustness, we know the boat is being built to a weight to be robust rather than ultimate performance. And therefore, in that whole concept of durability, etc., we think the shroud upgrade by October is a very wise step. And then Gunnar may be able to give any further detail on the process of that implementation of the 4 millimeter shrouds.
Yes, we in production with the new 15s being delivered. We have gone to 4 mil in delivering the Nacra 15 boats, and this is from the manufacturer side perspective. But the class is grandfathering the 3 millimeter shrouds, and I think Kenneth has to help me here. I think it's the 31st of December 2018 that these are allowed to be sailed with. But from the 1st of January 2019, it's no longer allowed to be sailing with the 3 mil. So they're just phasing out over time. Again, as Paul has tried to explain, there is no real particular reason why some of these shrouds have been failing, but they have, and it's not the load that is on it. Everybody can probably imagine there's something that's happening with them, and it's supposed to be solved by just going to a thicker version of the same shroud. But as we are pushing together with the class and as manufacturer to have an S1 design Nacra 15 as we can get it and keep it, with the main reason to get the perspective as broad as possible, that we can have as many participants from all trades of sail / life entering Nacra 15 class. That it's truly a grassroots sailing class where kids can grow up in, and that it does not become an arms battle. That is something that we as a manufacturer are trying to create as a representative for XCOM. Event that it becomes an arms race, like we see in some other classes. That's it, Paul.
Perfect. Thanks, Gunnar. And it's worth elaborating slightly on the ethos of us looking at the class rules, because it is a pathway class where it's economically and no performance gains. We've tried to be as open to allowing the sailors to learn to splice and make those tweaks and make the boats their own. But then when it gets down to new blocks and expensive additions, we've tried to tighten the class rules to ensure that there's no ambiguity on its one design heritage. So it is, we've tried to do it with two minds, both maintaining that economics, but whilst allowing the guys to learn the skills on their pathway.
Hey, Paul, can I just interject real quick? While we're talking about the 3 versus 4 millimeter shrouds, has there been any talk about, and I might be opening a can, changing the diamond wire diameter?
No, at this stage, we've not seen any reason to do so. I'll be honest, Todd. This is the first reference to it. We've been very aware through the community of the shroud scenario, but as far as I'm aware, we've not had any issues with diamonds thus far.
We had 2 diamonds break in the U.S. One was Pete Melvin's, and the understanding was I think it was chafe on their trailer, so we kind of just let it go. But it's something to keep an eye on. Yeah.
Well, and getting the latest scores on doors from Annalise this morning, to put that into perspective, we took a view on the shrouds purely because it was numerous enough that it wasn't an individual situation where you could put your finger on it like that example, Todd. But then it wasn't widespread to be too concerned for the short term. But numbers wise of boats, I think currently we're 105 boats out the door. So that's 210 shrouds and 210 diamonds. So if two have failed through transport issues, I think that's well within tolerance.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you.
So regarding the rules, what we're not going to do is start to issue further draft sets. We're going to go through due process, get the rules ratified by World Sailing. As soon as they're ratified, we'll share with the wider community, and then that will be our foundation to ensure the guys are all playing to the same rules. And again, it goes to the sailors rather than an equipment-led performance game. Okay. Collectively, how are we doing with the rules? Is there anything particularly, any other additions there, or should we move on to the next discussion point?
Well, this is Kenneth. I suggest we move on to the next point as we are limited in time.
Perfect.
Yeah. So the plan is to have to end this meeting at 1700 European time. So we have 45 minutes left. So.
Perfect. So the hot topic, foiling. What I definitely want to make sure our wider community is 100% sure about is the beauty of our Nacra 15 is it's a pathway to the Olympic class. Now, the Olympic class is literally cut and dry. It went from sea foils, and the Olympic class is now fully foiling. The Nacra 15, due to a request from World Sailing to provide a showcase event in Buenos Aires towards the end of next year, they wanted to know whether the 15 could be a foiling boat for that one showcase event. Due to the developments and the design from the guys at Nacra, the short answer was yes. So the 15 has a capacity to be foiling. Now, as we see it and as we know it right now, the greater use, the consistency is that the Nacra 15 throughout will be in its sea foiling configuration, and it will only be available in fully foiling mode for the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires. Now, the next question, which I believe stems from that fact, is, well, when will the kids get to try the boats, etc. Now, if we look at the selection process for the Youth Olympic Games, it really, really is, selecting the elite sailors of the world for this showcase event. So by nature of being selected, we won't get any weak sailors. We will be getting the best of the best. Now, if the best of the best at an under 19 age, I'm sure they're already mixing in the circles where probably they've already been foiling more than most of us guys within the chat page here anyway. Therefore, as it stands at the moment, the intention is in the build up to the Youth Olympic Games, we will have a further period of specifically training on the Nacra 15 in its foiling mode. And then we will take a view, or Nacra HQ will take a view post Youth Olympic Games, whether that foiling package will be commercially available. So the fundamental message is we're not looking to dilute the sea foil configuration which the boat is in at the moment, which I'd describe as the World Sailing configuration. That is the configuration the World Sailing Youth Championships it's supplied equipment for and will remain for the foreseeable. And so just as we're starting to get momentum on deliveries of the World Sailing format, we're not looking to dilute and confuse the situation, because the other thing which we'll be very mindful, the learning curve for all, both manufacturers and sailors, is quite steep at the moment with the Nacra 17, and the commonsensical scenario there is all the learnings taken from the 17 will be applied to the final design of the Nacra 15. Independently, as an enthusiast, I would right now state an additional consideration, I believe, for any future development of the boat is its exchangeability between systems, because we know the 17 is effectively a permanent upgrade. And so there's all these design criteria to consider prior to any commercially available foiling package. But so the key thing is there will be a foiling 15 available for the Youth Olympic Games, and it will be fully tried and tested to provide that showcase event. The kids throughout in their process will be up and running to be able to provide showcase sailing on those boats, and that's our current plan. Again, Kenneth, Gunnar, anything you'd like to expand on there?
Oh yeah, there's a question coming in from Charlotte. I think we can look on that one. So the question is, if the foils are released, will the class rules be modified again? As a response to that, I believe there will be a separate section for the foiling version for now, I would say, for the Youth Olympics. And let's say if the commercial version will be available, then the class rules obviously will be modified. Exactly.
So again, just being very clear, the strict one design Nacra 15 class rules relate to the C-foils, because that is what's widely available. As a standalone event, there'll be and with equipment supplied. So the equipment supplied will be all identical. So by nature, that will be its own class rules. And then further down the line, if there's two versions of the boat, the class rules will be adapted to account for that.
So there's a question from Nick to elaborate on what we mean with showcase. With showcase, we mean it's a single event. So the boats will be there for a single event, being the Youth Olympics. And as upon request of World Sailing, it was done to show everybody what can be done with youth and with this type of boats. I hope that's clear.
Perfect. Any more? Does that clearly? Because what I want, again, at the risk of being repeating myself, it's the importance of
Can I
go on,
shortly comment on this? I'm wondering, because as the executive committee from the Nacra 15 class, we kind of want to get these sort of discussions to go through Zoom, because Kenneth is recording these meetings, so we can always look back on what was decided and what was discussed. But Nacra Sailing had been asked by World Sailing, by the chairman or chair lady, I should say, from Development and Youth Committee within World Sailing, by a head of competitions of World Sailing, if we could please postpone the launch of the foiling Nacra 15, following the Z-foil design like the current Nacra 17 is, as of the reasons that Paul just mentioned. So the 15, we already launched a video, I think 6 months ago, that it's finished. Design is, written in stone. And one benefit of postponing such launch is that we are able to look at the results, as Paul also explained, what's going on with the 17. Especially things like we went from the passive bearing in the last 2 weeks to the active bearing, all replaced. Not ideal, but probably necessary to keep things in order and correct. But what I'm interested in is, what do the people think, like Simon and Nick and Todd, and I see other names here like Lisa. These are the reasons why Nacra Sailing decided to postpone the foiling Nacra 15. And what do you guys think of that we are following the request of World Sailing with postponing it, actually, in the hoping that it benefits the sea foil version, Nacra 15, and that it keeps that momentum. But what do you guys think? Please let us know.
Gunnar, I'm happy to chime in here. I actually had a conversation with Corey Sertle, who I think you're referring to, yesterday, and I'll fill you in more on that later. But I personally think that there's a lot of people out there that have bought the boat, very excited to foil, and want to get into the foiling platform. And the important thing to remember is, like you said, we don't want to dilute the seaboard version, but we're maybe holding back some growth of people that want to buy the boat and do both. So I think that, the very least a firm time frame of when it's going to be launched. And then also I think that it's very important to have it available soon enough that people can train for the Youth Olympics, at least a few months before to be safe. And those are my two things.
Okay, yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah. You got me on speaker?
Yeah, we can hear you, Simon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in Australia, the big discussion is pretty well the same as that. Is a lot of kids are getting into the class expecting to be foiling, and also leaving it to the Youth Olympics or just prior to the start foiling. Speaking to a few of the Nacra 17 crews here that have gone back over, it's a bit of a learning curve for anybody to start foiling, and with kids, and thinking you might have kids over there, 13 or 14, first jumping onto a foiling boat might be a bit detrimental rather than having a lead up to the event.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. But then we hear what you're saying there, Simon, for sure.
Yeah.
But then I think by nature of your description there, expectations is, the beauty of the 15 is 13, 14-year-old guys and girls can jump on the boat, but that probably will be in the start of their multi-hull experience. Whereas we do expect the guys who will be qualified and racing in the finals for the Youth Olympic Games will be probably towards the latter end of that age category, right up to under 19. And I think we can see, but just by on the radar now, at 19, what the guys are doing. And that's where the 15 would be available or not, because there's a wider base to gain that foiling experience from. But then we're being very mindful of making sure that everything's being kept safe, and we'll do the best to make that event the best it can be.
Yeah, well, that's looking at the 17. You want to get it right for the 15, I think. Otherwise, you could lose a lot of people too.
Yeah. And then again, using that. If we launched it all at the same time, we'd be finding it all at the same time on both boats. So I think the prudent thing is to do the staged distribution, and current intentions are as we've just described, but we'll be mindful, and we'll keep an open mind as things progress.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool.
Paul, we still don't have any, and I know you're kind of saying you'll keep us up to date. We still don't have any idea of a time frame that we would like to see it in. Are we still trying to decide that based on World Sailing's wishes?
Well, in the last meeting we had as a committee, it is what we are considering a strong possibility at this point is exactly what we've just described. That we'll go through the qualification periods for the continental qualifiers. We'll go into the finals in October in Buenos Aires. There'll be a period prior to the actual regatta for a training period and coming up to speed with the specificness of the Nacra 15. But then outside that, our perception is the guys would have already had access to train on 17s, for example, in the build up to that finals. So at the moment, the timeline is October is when the first kits and first time we'll see the 15 foiling in its in the flesh. And then after that, a commercial decision will be made about going forwards.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Gunnar, any more points on the foiling?
No. That's it. That's it for us. We will keep our ear down to the ground to see when all institutes are ready. All the sailors are ready. I can imagine that young sailors can't wait to get into foiling, but a yearly returning event will be the Youth World Championships organized by World Sailing. In December, we will be in Sanya, China. 2018, of course, Corpus, and so on and so on. But the Youth Olympic Games, the only sailing boat there is competing is the Nacra 15, and we are obviously very lucky to have arranged that together with the kite surfers and the windsurfers. But sailing on the Youth Olympic Games could be a one-time deal. It is not decided that sailing in what shape or what form will be repeated on the next Youth Olympic Games, followed by Buenos Aires ones. So I would stretch to anybody that has interest in it is to have the sea foil version like it is sailed at the Youth Worlds. Is that is the leading version for sailing or for kids around the world in general, and that whatever we get out of the Youth Olympic Games is bonus in terms of promotion, publicity. And what's happening here in Europe is that lots of kids from other classes are now trying to get into the Nacra 15 because the Nacra 15 is used at the Youth Olympic Games. But once selections are gone, they will pull back to their original classes. So that does not mean growth for the Nacra 15 in the long term. Nacra 15 growth in the long term is what we've seen in Garda, and probably the next Worlds in Barcelona next year. We will double the fleet, and the doubling of the fleet probably will continue for the next 2 or 3 years if we see the order intake going mad. Interesting, and you'll probably come back to that, is how we can keep up with production and what we're doing around that. But for the rest, that's it. Was that too long?
No, that's all right. That's good. Good. Okay, guys. Right, moving on then. So events as well, because the key thing is we talked about boats, the format, we talked about the rules, and now what are we going to be doing with the boats? Fundamentally, we'll have, the Youth Olympic Games is a standalone thing, so we're looking at the World Sailing Championships annually. We know what the list is there, and then the reason why I want to highlight the events program now is we have the 2018 World Championships, which is an annual World Championships, currently scheduled for Barcelona. We can see here April 2000 event. If we go down, yeah. When is it? It's towards the end of April in Barcelona there, isn't it? And then currently on the table, we've got serious interest from USA, Clearwater, Florida for 2019. Also, we've had application or interest from Australia, Queensland. And so what we're compiling now is a bid book, a document which will help any venue to understand the criteria for Nacra 15 World Championships, and we'll look to have an established calendar in advance and as solidly advertised and committed as we can, just to give everyone that calendar to work to. Obviously, outside, that's on the global sense. The fantastic thing we're seeing now with the increased numbers going out to each individual country is the establishment of national classes. So by nature, there we're getting a strong national championships in each country where there's a number of boats, and then continentally, that will lead to continental championships and Europeans, etc. And then, like I say, pulling it all together on an annual Worlds. So we will be looking to enhance the calendar as it goes, and we can see on the website, the best source of information will be the website. We can see we've got a good framework there already, and we'll just look to enhance that event framework. Any questions from anyone regarding events?
Yes. Availability of charter boats at the Worlds, for example, next April. I've been asked over here from the guys.
Simon, yeah, I wish we had a plethora of boats. I really do. I'm sure Gunnar will comment here, but the practicalities are so many boats can be built so quickly. We've got pre-ordered boats to adhere to first. So in an ideal scenario, it'd be fantastic to have a container load of charter boats to be able to charter at a commercially viable and a sailor acceptable rate. But effectively, the way I understand it at the moment is literally private clients are being facilitated first. And so, whilst there's such a demand on the boat, yes, put the words out there for charter opportunities. And I have to say, I saw on there, there's a first second-hand boat available in Holland at the moment. I know the Australian guys have just shipped a boat over for the European circuit, and they're fortunate enough to have a boat at home and in Europe. So all I can offer on this one is be creative, and the scenario will hopefully ease 2 or 3 years down the line. Once we've got the second-hand boat scenarios flying, charter scenarios hopefully will increase as well. Does that answer your question in short term? It's just
Yeah, no.
So what would you like us to do, Simon?
No, because the problem with this discussion a few months ago, the regatta and the Barcelona Worlds fall in a sort of an odd time for us because our sailing season is pretty well up till April. So anybody shipping boats would have to ship a month before, 2 months before, which is in the middle of the Australian season.
Yeah.
And that's one reason the team from Perth bought the boat here and shipped it back over. Is they're quite keen. That's the only way they could do it. And people last time about 3 crews that have asked about charter boats, whether they do a charter like with some other cats where you can charter and they sell them pre-sold and the new owners pick them up afterwards at the reduced rate.
Yeah. Well, that model. If there's boats available to do that, who knows?
Yeah, fair enough.
But if there's just no boats available at the moment, because I know that.
Sorry, Paul.
No, you interact.
I can interact on that time. And your question, I understand your question, and it sounds so logical. So nothing weird about that, because we would love to get the kids from and parents, of course. Sorry about that. Coming into Barcelona from Australasia or from anywhere in the world, and as a class, what we can look into is how we can arrange, let's say, a boat pool. To ask all the owners who will be going to Barcelona Worlds and who will not be going there. We would just ask the members of the class, and that's probably a topic that Paul and Kenneth will come to later. the members and the memberships is maybe we can arrange to get trailers double stacked with boats driving to Barcelona and arrange used boats as potential charter boats. If we do that enough upfront in terms of timing, then that could be feasible solution to get at least 5 or 6 or maybe 10 boats. That's one thing. And the other explanation in terms of production, the production is going actually very well. There's 15 to 16 boats per month being delivered. If you add that, if you take that over, next period going to the end of 2018, the production will even be, the production output of the Nacra 15 is even increasing over time. So that looks good and solid. One setback we had, but on the other hand is a great thing for Nacra 15 and its class, is that world sailing, it never happened prior to Auckland Youth Worlds, that the youth multi-hull was filled up to every slot of nations. And it was the first time that it was overfilled, and there were more countries wanting to get into the Nacra 15 than actual boats available. We managed to get it to 22 in the end. But now they've officially requested us as a Nacra Sailing and Nacra 15 class if we could add more boats, so more nations could be joining and sailing Youth Worlds. And then now the official number is 25 boats for the coming Youth Worlds in Sanya. Up until today, there is 16/17 nations entered into the Youth Worlds. And they've got until the 16th of September the time to get entered as a nation. And because we now have to supply more boats in Sanya and ship them earlier because of Chinese customs, which can be quite hard to get something into the country. And we are making reservations for boats in Corpus Christi, plus the Youth Olympic Games. We even had to send a letter out to customers in North America that there is delay in the Nacra 15s because of those reasons. And this is not something we do for fun. It's just realistic. It's a trade-off between having more nations into your youth class. And we must remember in this game, the more nations we get on board, the bigger the footprint we have in youth sailing, and with the bigger the impact. That is what is really important. Okay, Paul.
No, that's it. Thank you very much. So yeah, charter boats. It's fantastic that we've got the demand, but together, I think we just need to be explore all opportunities for supply of that.
I think a container over from the U.S. as well for the Barcelona Worlds. I think that's about 90% sure right now. So I can potentially, and I'm not guaranteeing anything, talk to some of our U.S. dealers who are planning to buy some in the spring if there's some available, and having them shipped after Worlds. And obviously first dibs to be going to U.S. teams, but maybe we can make that work for some Australian teams. And I'm sure it won't be inexpensive, but it might be an option. So I'll keep you guys in the loop on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. And then Simon, just going back one step as well about your, obviously with any World Championships, we're trying to please as many people as we can, as much of the time. And I think you'll be a brave man to please all the people all the time. And so, seasonally, we're all on a global scale be slightly out of joint. And just to understand the timing of the April World Championships, that was a world sailing criteria because that's the final qualification period for the remaining 7 slots for the Youth Olympic Games. That had to be completed before, off the top of my head, I think it was before July. But then for sure in the whole of Europe, May and June is an intense exam period for all the guys. And so April was really the latest opportunity to run the Worlds in Barcelona. That's how we got to that date. And then obviously there's the constraints of an event capable of hosting a Worlds. And again, criteria. So hopefully that explains how we came to that conclusion there.
I presume.
Yeah, there we are. But look, we'll look forward to your guys' bids to hit the table for an event over your side, and then we'll be having the same challenges to get to your neck of the woods.
I might have to wait a few years so you can send the container of 40 boats out.
You've already had 20. Okay, well, look, the other point before we just go into open discussion I want to bring up is about racing formats as well. Because as well as the strict one design scenario of the Nacra 15, we do want it to be as open as possible. But we also understand that some of the bigger events, which we're all being, our guys are working hard to get selected for, like the World Championship, the World Sailing Youth World Championships, which is a pinnacle annual event for the guys. And the Youth Olympic Games, for example, they have their stringent mixed under a certain age criteria. Whereas in the broader sense, we know actually physically getting two sailors together to enjoy their sailing, that's hard enough in itself, let alone two mixed sailors. Sometimes the dynamic is, two brothers, two sisters, whatever. So what we're looking to do within our formats is encourage racing from an open criteria as much as possible. But then from that open racing, we can extrapolate results for specific qualification to a defined criteria. So I would foresee, for example, in the Worlds, in the World Championships, it'd be an open participation criteria. So you could go boy, boy, girl, girl, or mixed. But then subsequently, if there's a selection from that event to be selected, they would have to conform to the strict criteria of that event. So does that make sense to people?
Yeah, over in Australia, that's what we're doing this Christmas with our nationals and youth selection. It's an open event, and exactly what you said, selection on criteria with those teams within. Perfect.
Yeah. And I think the other thing at this stage as well, because I think further down the line, we might, to being as inclusive as possible, peers racing amongst their peers, I would see no reason why we have to split any fleets if it's peers racing within their peers. Suddenly, if you get Gunnar wanting to sail with Anna in a few years, we might well have to make a different criteria for father son, father daughter teams, just so that we're not getting a mismatch of experience, upsetting very valid qualification potentials. But at this moment in time, it's been as inclusive as possible. Is there anything anyone would like to add to that particular point?
Well, it was a question from Lisa, so that's answered by this one.
Perfect. Hopefully that's cool, Lisa. So that's the racing formats. So that brings me on to open questions. Guys, with the topics we've just sort of outlined here, is there anything from the community that we haven't addressed? Because it'd be a shame to go away from this Zoom chat without everyone being as informed as possible.
Paul, one concern I had was the trim sheet numbers and looking at them comparative to the numbers I've been seeing people using. Like they're using a lot more spreader rake and a lot more diamonds than I've ever heard of on some of these boats. And I've mentioned it to beginner that I think it'd be advisable for the class to come out with some updated trim sheet and maybe some standards that are warrantyable, to, you know, kind of like how the 17s we said, you know, after 42 on the loose gauge, it's not warranty. That should definitely be addressed before we start seeing more failures.
Yeah, agreed, Todd. I mean, you know, I'll put my hands up. That trim sheet that came from my initial set of numbers. Obviously, I went into sailing the boat and working with the boat from scratch quite quickly. We had a number of 2 and 3 boat sessions over here in the early days of last year, and that gave us those base settings. And then, I have to say, from experimentation myself, I did run some higher diamond numbers, which definitely had a performance gain. But then the wall section of the mast, that can only hold a certain compression strength. Therefore, those trim sheet numbers are what's perceived as a maximum. And if at the moment, if people are running outside that, we did discuss it with Peter about, and this was following what we saw at New Zealand as well. If we start to have longer spreaders to induce mast bend, etc., and higher numbers on the diamonds, it will result in gear failure. So you're right, we probably need to be a little bit more drawing a line in the sand, working with the manufacturer just to understand what what the recommendations are, and then if anyone chooses to go beyond that, be at their own risk.
Good, thanks, Paul.
From manufacturer side, Gunnar, I mean, we did have those chats in New Zealand. Is there anything you'd like to share on that important point at this stage?
Concerning trimming or warranties or braking stuff?
Yeah, probably, within reason, taking what do the sailors need to be mindful? How do we manage the scenario where if the guys are winding on diamonds beyond what's recommended, just communicating those limits.
It is such a gray area to be saying something about it. The trim sheet is where we go from. If failures are being found because of abusive of equipment, then it will pop up. I know one thing is that most teams are not using their boat or abusing their boat, so they are certain that it breaks, because everybody understands that to finish first, you first must finish. So breaking your boat has no point at all. But in New Zealand, we had a team which was really, really strong for their age. And they pulled some ropes into 2 pieces because they just were pulling so incredibly hard on the Cunningham. And it will take a couple of years, I guess, before the kids, which then have been growing out of this class, but the team leaders, the coaches, everybody around such vehicle as Nacra 15 will understand the loads. And we just need to make sure that when we go to the U-boats again, is that us as a manufacturer that are supplying the boats without any charter fee, is that we set up the boats in a way that we know that that when the countries take possession of their boats, is that everything on all boats was trimmed the same, and from there it's up to them. I mean, we also see it in other products that we build. You can break anything if you like, and most of the time when boats break, it's the blame of the manufacturer. And when teams win, the sailors are brilliant, and we just got used to that. To lots of people looking at like that, looking at it that way. But I guess common sense will take us the furthest in these sort of matters.
Yeah, agreed. And then just linking right back into the first point of discussion with the rules update, what I'd like to share here for sure is we did witness in Garda and the Dutch Youth Regatta actually, a couple of the smaller teams rigging up their Cunningham so it could pull 16-1 rather than the standard 8-1. And so what I'd like to share here right now is, you know, the class rule is a mandatory 8-1. That is what the equipment has been designed to withstand. If you double that, you know, that's a doubling of already a considerable load. Again, to explore that fully and the gains that such a higher purchase of downhaul might give you, Peter is open to a further period of testing, but for sure, until that is conducted, you know, one of the key updates to the rules is that the stating of the downhaul is to be rigged as standard to a maximum of 8-1 purchase.
Yeah, Mr. Kenneth, sorry, Paul. So there were some questions on the chat regarding input to the rules, and I replied. There was a question from Nick from Belgium. So thanks, Nick. But of course, as I stated, the NIC should be as stable as possible. But of course, the members should have control over them. So if you have recommendations or remarks, maybe it's best to wait after you see the final version, but of course you can send them up front to myself. I'll make sure it will be used. Yeah,
and that's an important point, Ken. Thanks for that, because just so everyone's aware as well, is, you know, we're putting our necks on the line here, guys, and trying to do the best as we can for both the sailors and the manufacturers. So making sure that the sailors have as many performance gains as possible, whilst the boats work within their intended design structure. But then the ongoing process. So the revised set of class rules will be that starting point, and then year on year from there on, at our annual general meeting, the sailors will get to vote on any potential class rule changes, and then at that point, you know, that purely on a majority basis, that could be implemented to further additions of the class rules. So what we're looking to do here is sensibly start with the best working document we possibly can, but then we will be, again, very mindful of our community and allow adaptation within the ethos of our One Design nature. Are there any other points on the open discussion forum?
I've got one. On the shrouds, just going back to the beginning, whereabouts are they all breaking? Is it near the swage at the bottom?
Yeah, it is the swage at the bottom, Simon. So what I'd suggest, you know, the thing to share is when the boats are being transported, to ensure that lower end of the shroud isn't folded over repeatedly or deformed past a certain point. You know, it's just keep a regular eye on that, and of course the basic thing of ensuring that the shrouds are pulled to the takeoff on the hull.
Okay, yeah, we had one, the last regatta broke, that's why I was asking if they're all there. Would that be to do with the swaging at all? Because
No,
I mean, I saw a Viper with 3 mil, and the quality of the swage on the Nacra is, just looking at it, is a bit inferior to what the Viper is. It's yeah, and it's the wire at the one that was broken, and even on our one, it's rusting already. There's a lot of rust on the wire.
Yeah.
Internally.
3 or 4.
Like I say, we feedback from the manufacturer is we've looked into it. There's no discernible root cause right now, and so just out of that, better safe than sorry. It is a fact that's happened, and therefore, hence the change to the 4mm.
Okay, and the 4 mil, was that the forestay as well, or just the shrouds?
No, we've only seen the failures on the shrouds.
Okay.
So at this
So
point,
you still have to sail with a 3 mil forestay.
yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, just going on shrouds, staymasters, will they be approved now in the class rules?
Yeah, and that was a minor oversight in that first draft. The fact that the Staymaster is actually the manufacturer supplied adjustable option. It wasn't on there. So again, that's a sort of very realistic, everyday revision to the class rules. Nothing fundamental, nothing sort of too drastic, but sensible upgrades such as that.
And one other thing, the Spinnaker Pole. This is a design thing. Where the compression rod attaches,
yep,
you have that stainless steel T bracket which is riveted to the top of the Spinnaker pole.
Yeah.
As it's a compression rod which is pulling up the pole, if you nosedive and put excessive pressure on the pole, it will snap there. Reason being is because you've got 2 rivet holes which corrode over time. Would it be a better design to have a stainless steel tube or something that goes around and is riveted at the bottom, so you haven't got the stress razor at the top corroding?
Simon,
and if you hit...
let me. That's one of our. I have to say, thank you for bringing it up again. We're there on it. There's now there's an internal. There's an internal strengthening, and it's an alley, so like for like material. So we're not going for that the fizz between stainless and alley. You've got an internal aluminium strengthener at that point. It's about 30 centimeters long, and then as of maybe 6 weeks ago, I'd say the timeline on that. Anything coming out of the factory as of 6 weeks ago should have had that. Internal strengthener in there.
Oh, that's fake. I just bought a new Spinnaker pole, and I heard on the grapevine that there was a tube inside it, and ours hasn't got it. What diameter is that tube out of interest?
Off the top of my head, I haven't got it, Simon, but I tell you, let me get back into the workshop, and I'll buzz that over for you.
Okay, but yeah, just generally as an engineering thing, having the rivet holes at the top on the compression rod is, and even if you've got an aluminium doubler underneath, it's a stress razor. The hole should be at the bottom, whereas it's in compression under the pole, because you have it's in tension at the top of the pole if you hit the water, and if you've got some holes drilled in there, it's just going to tear there.
I refer to manufacturer, but what we do know is effectively as well, looking at the other products, the 17 has the same arrangement, and now with the strengthener in the 17 is a problem that doesn't show. So on longevity, and again, this is where we were keen to implement something which we felt that there was a weakness in the armour, because the nature of the boat does need that durability and robustness, because at the end of the day, the kids are going to put it through hell. and we want a product that sort of stands up to it.
Okay. Would these tubes available to purchase, to put in aftermarket?
Yes, I should imagine they will be. Again, what I can do is refer to.
Okay. I'll wait for your correspondence.
Yeah, and it's basically it's a relatively easy retrofit. It's just it's a few rivets to take out, slide it up, re-rivet, job done.
Okay, no worries.
Good, thank you for that. Any other comments?
Well, one question hasn't been answered, Paul. It's the one from Wellrich to everyone. It was mentioned that there would be training prior to Youth Olympic Games. What does that timetable look like? And we kind of already have an idea for that.
Yeah, well, would you like to expand on that then, Gunnar?
Yeah. Together with head of competitions from World Sailing, in conjunction with the organizing party of Buenos Aires, it was set to 7 days, that teams will get 7 days of training time before the Youth Olympic Games with their gear.
No, well.
That's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And of course, the question from Nick Moorman: if you can make publicity for the Belgian nationals somehow.
Yeah, for sure. Any publicity of any Nacra 15 activity, fire it all over to Edwin via the class Facebook page or email, and then we will share information as best we can to both promote the class internationally and on a national basis as well. And then you'll notice that each class is becoming officially affiliated within the member states. We're having a little pull down menu that via the International Class Association you can access the national class information as well.
Yeah, so on that one, there was a question in the beginning if the German class was up. So I think that's being set up. And the other question from Nick, I already forwarded to Edwin, so he will ask them to put it up on the Facebook page.
I know it's unfortunate and a bit late, but we have our nationals this week. There are already 8 N15s, Nacra 15s, who have entered, one or two Dutch, I think. So, if we could have some Great Britain, or some German, or some additional from the Netherlands, that would be very nice. Okay,
Nick, unfortunately, I would say probably from Team GB. I know that we're all down at an event this weekend at Stokes Bay. And so I think there's a bit of a conflict. But I think that's where we would look to enhance our events calendar, that each nation does have a listing within the overall events, and so people can pick and choose for sure. And and it's the nature of an individual team. Some teams have the facility and the ability to travel wide and far, whereas some teams will stick to home and maybe just do a national event. The important thing is the information is out there on the websites to ensure that those who want to do everything, they know where it is. And then, like you say, as much the more we can get international teams attending each other's nationals, we can all keep in check with who the runners and riders are, and that performance level of nationals. But also, it's great from a social and interaction element as well. Cool.
Hey.
So, are we about there, folks? Any other questions I can't see behind the scenes?
Paul, one other thing maybe you guys could help with. Sorry to just one last thing here is I've had a lot of requests for some kind of forum or some way to have a crew finder. There's a lot of people interested in sailing the boats. Obviously, I'm sure this is a problem in other countries. that can't connect with people and can't find crews, and there's so much interest for people, but we can't connect them. So if we can have a way that they can connect themselves online, that would be really, really helpful. If you guys can think of anything, and I'll keep thinking about how that could work too.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that stems back to this whole racing formats, isn't it? We know it's very difficult to get guys on double handers, full stop. So anything we can do to help, we'll keep an open mind.
Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Cool. Okay, guys, looks like we're about there. Hopefully this first of our inaugural Zoom chats has been of use and benefit to everyone. We will ourselves learn to get the information out there in whatever best way is as efficient as possible as well. But I think this format is very useful. So any feedback, stay in touch. We're all here, very approachable. Effectively, it's all our classes. It's not just any one of us. So it's important we hear your thoughts. So without any further ado then, Kenneth, any last comments from your good self?
No, other than I'd like to thank everybody for making the time. And like you said, it's great having everybody so interested in our very beautiful class. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, guys. Let's stay in touch. And if anyone's missed this call, it is available on a recording. And so if anyone's got an hour spare, maybe they'll like to listen in.
Will we have the link, or will it be the link? The link will be available to the recording?
Kenneth, I'll refer that to you on technical wizardry.
Yes, I will send it out or publish it on Facebook or on our website.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
No, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Okay.